Hey, and we are back. It is Wake Up Woodward, and we appreciate you, chat family, for kicking off the day with the Woo Crew. We got the victory shades on right now because those Detroit Pistons, they did something against the Portland Trailblazers that they've done all season, and that's bounce back. You know, they've taken a loss here, they've taken 2 losses here, they've taken 3 losses here, but they have found a way to realistically keep the expectation, the new expectations, all ahead of them. And they have parlayed this now into being 5.5 games ahead of the next closest team behind them. They have a sure, firm hold on that 6th seed as the season is starting to come down to the final stretch. And this West Coast trip was one that we wanted to see at least go 2-2. We thought they had an opportunity to come back above 500. They do go 2-2 over the weekend. They drop a tough one to the Warriors, 115-110. Steph Curry and Cade Cunningham absolutely showed out in that game. But Draymond Green came up big down the stretch, and they lost. They lost a close one. Sparty Green, man.
I hate that Draymond Green hit the game winner.
I hate that.
But you live with that, though.
You
live with that.
Look, they came in with the same record.
Yeah. Who really expected Draymond to hit that shot? And then it was followed by a Cade turnover, which, kind of did him in. But
and you know what, those Cade turnovers, he will say to himself, too, you want to be better with those turnovers. I do believe that all the high-usage players, we know them, all the high-usage stars in the league, they're going to have turnover issues. But it's about when they come. Obviously, you want Cade in those fourth quarters to be as decisive a scorer and decisive a facilitator as possible and to tighten up the handles just a little bit. But it's what's going to happen. He's getting blitzed. And this is where I do believe having a Jaden Ivey in the lineup helps a ton, because earlier in the season, that's where Jaden Ivey was lunching. They were blitzing Cade, double-teaming Cade. They were able to get the ball into Ivey's hands in the downhill action, as well as his ability to hit the three-point shot and the floaters. Everything was running in the form for an Ivy, and that's where in a game against the Warriors is where when the Warriors changed their defense and how they were attacking Cade, which this is going to happen a lot in the playoffs. This is going to happen a lot throughout the rest of his career. This is where I was just thinking that game, like watching it back, man, I wish there was a Jaden Ivey type player out there. But, before we move on to the Trailblazers, man, that Warriors-Pistons game.
Yeah, so I feel like I'm kind of on one today, and I'm going to say something that will make a small segment upset, but I think you guys will understand. I don't put any of that Warriors loss on Cade Cunningham whatsoever. I understand that his turnovers were high. I understand that the one when they were down by 2 where he got ripped by Moses Moody, that's not ideal. Don't get me wrong. His turnovers last couple of games have gotten alarmingly high. But when it comes to the Golden State Warriors game, I think Cade was the least of your worries, because despite the turnovers, he still gave you 31 points on 17 shots with 5 assists as well. And I actually have my last graphic of the day to really point the finger of who actually should get more of the blame for the Pistons' loss to the Warriors. You got that one, JB?
Yep.
All right. Look at this. Cade Cunningham was 2 of 3 from behind the arc. The rest of the team was 3 of 20. That's a 52% difference. Cade from the free throw line was 90%. The rest of the team was 69%. On the other end, and I get it, Steph Curry has way more credit line than Cade Cunningham has or probably will ever have. But Steph was uncharacteristically cold from behind the arc. But unlike Cade, his teammates, particularly Draymond Green at the end, picked him up. And I'm not saying that his teammates shot a good percentage from behind the arc, because 31% certainly is not, but they did shoot it better than Steph Curry did. So for all of the people doing mini crash outs on the timeline about Cade's turnovers, as I've always said, you gotta look at the whole picture sometimes. This reminded me a little bit too much of a game that he would have last year, and some of the same discourse was some of the same discourse I'd been hearing last year. It's not as loud, but it's still there.
Yeah, he's not necessarily the cause of losses, but when you do have a Cade Cunningham, you want him to be a player who can play as clean as possible because of what you're expecting him to be. I do believe that there are going to be more nights where his team has these types of nights, and like SGA is able to do with OKC and some of the other top players. And this is part of the maturation of a Cade Cunningham. They're able to get their team above that. And we know that with where Cade Cunningham is right now, it's going to be a lot more on him until they get him more top-level help or until some of these other players continue the trajectory. But most importantly, I just believe that this was one of those scheduling losses when I look at it. They fought hard. But to me, when you look at the time zones, when you look at the West Coast trip, when you look at how tough they've been fighting, I just believe that this was one where their legs looked out of it. They didn't look like they were necessarily, obviously, they weren't in rhythm and on fire. And if they were, this is a completely different complex to the game. And you're right. It took a Draymond Green, unlikely Draymond Green 3 to really sink this team. And to me, that's where it does show that Cade Cunningham did what he was supposed to do. You're in this game all the way down the stretch to a Warriors team. We all know their record in the West, even though it's the same, not all records are the same. What they've done in the West is going to hold a little bit more weight than what the Pistons have done in the East. And so that's where I'm like, you know what? It's, to me, I chalk it up more to a schedule loss. And if Cade does, by what you highlight, if Cade does get that help, this is probably a win going the other way. And that's what we've seen with the Pistons this year. They have smacked some teams when everything is working right, the defense and the offense. But with the Trailblazers game, to obviously get that get right game. And the Trailblazers, to me, have been a lot better recently than they were to start the season. So this is one where the record of the Trailblazers is not necessarily what you look at. You look at the fact that the Pistons did something that they don't normally do, and that's come back 500 on the West Coast road trip. When you look at their record overall this year, Rod told me at the beginning of this Woodward Pistons journey and covering this team, how the Pistons do on West Coast road trips is how they're going to do in the season. It is a microcosm, and they've been much better. So I want to look at this thing in an overall vacuum. I'm so glad that they were able to bounce back against the Trailblazers, who had a pretty decent game plan and had some people that put up some good individual efforts. But the Detroit Pistons overall, from just top to bottom, within that starting lineup, they were on one, man. And shout out to Tobias Harris. I think he had the prototypical approved Chase GPT game. He put up the rebounds. He had the 9. He got the points. He had 20. 1 of 3 from behind the arc, 9 of 13 from the floor.
Wait, what was that, JB?
Oh, I thought I heard an attaboy.
All right. And JB, I know you're a nicer guy than I am and a more beloved figure at Woodward Sports than I am. But can we hold this man's feet to the fire? He is literally watching Pistons games and going like, oh, fuck, every time Tobias Harris does something good, even if it results in Pistons wins, and nobody says a word.
Yeah.
We got whole same game parlays of unders with Tobias Harris.
JB, you my mans. You on some bullshit, though. You been on some bullshit, JB.
Like, come on.
You got to call your mans out when you on bullshit.
In the last 17 games, Tobias is averaging 17 points and 6 rebounds on 55% from the floor. And he's doing exactly what we needed him to do. He's been an absolute demon when it comes to those easy buckets, those mid-range in the post. He's been doing all of that. He's been such a steadying presence on this team. And I get it, JB. Tobias Harris was not good at the beginning of the year, and we all lamented it. But everybody else has come around and been like, you know what? He's doing all right now, and he's helping the Pistons win.
For several months now.
Yes.
Honestly. That's where it's like at the beginning of the season, it wasn't necessarily that player that we wanted, that we thought was going to be the 2 or the 3. We believed he was going to contribute in certain ways. When I was trying to convince KG, like, look, he will be serviceable. I was like, he could be your 17-5-5 guy.
I wasn't trying to hear it.
17-5 guy. 17-5-2. Get your rebounds, get a couple assists, and get your shooting splits. That's what he's looked like over the last several months.
Yeah.
And to me, if this trend continues, I do, like, just looking at the long-term and the longevity, I do hope he's one of those guys like a Stewart where they can find a comfortable spot for him on this team in the future, because he does work with this team. Yeah. The one thing that I was looking forward to with this squad was the chemistry that they were going to build. We knew growing up that every time there was a trade, especially with the good teams, they would tell you, oh, don't worry about their early season struggles because they just added these players. Wait till they catch their stride. And that's what we see out of this Detroit Pistons team. They've caught their stride, and they've been one of the best teams in all of the NBA. And a lot of that has to do with what some of the help around Cade Cunningham has done. We know that Cade had to take that next leap into stardom. But we also see when you look at this Portland Trailblazers game, their starters overwhelmed the Portland Trailblazers.
Yeah.
Asar Thompson didn't have the best game, 5 points. 6 rebounds, but foul trouble for him. 5 fouls most of the game, 21 minutes. Jalen Duren only got 29 minutes because of foul trouble, but he was still able to put up 18 and 12 with 2 assists and 2 stocks, 7 of 10 from the floor. We all know Cade went off 28, 5 and 4, 2 of 4 from three-point land, 9 of 17 from the floor. And so, from that standpoint, they had what they needed. And in the backcourt off the bench of Dennis Schroeder and Malik Beasley combined for 22 points. Off the bench, and Dennis Schroeder even, the 4 assists, showing the facilitation aspect. So it's like, you know what, if this team, they got right, and that's what you want to see. They handled business. That was a handle your business type game against the Trailblazers. And I'm glad that they did. They moved now to, 19-16 on the road this season. That, to me, is something to definitely tip your cap to with the success they've shown on the road, the success that they've shown out on the West Coast trip, and overall the major success and improvement they've shown on this season. That's what this, even though it was 2-2 West Coast road trip at this juncture in the season, that put the Pistons at 36-29. They still have less losses right now than the combined win totals from the previous 2 seasons. Which is crazy.
That's wild, but it's a testament to the improvement because you got to give them credit for that. And one thing that I love too about this Pistons Blazers game was you saw the 2-man half court Cade Cunningham and Jalen Duren game. 5 of Cade Cunningham's assists were on Jalen Duren lobs in the half court. You love to see it. It's an unstoppable force when done correctly. When you combine Cade's slowing down the game and him dictating the pace with Jalen Duren's athleticism, it's going to be absolutely deadly. And you touched on it a little bit as well. This was not a gimme win last night. The Portland Trailblazers have been on a run as of late. They've been playing much better. I know they even have some maybe fancy themselves potentially challenging the depleted, thanks Nico Harrison, Dallas Mavericks team to maybe even get into the playoffs. So good get-right game. A couple of disappointing losses on this West Coast trip where you feel like you had a chance to win and you didn't. But overall 2-2 on the road, and I believe they're only a half a game back of the Pacers for the 5th seed.
Yeah. And you know what? And I think that's the best word to use. It's disappointing 2-2, not because you think they failed, but because we see what this team's potential actually is. When we look at what the Red Wings are right now in the Pistons, when we look at Michigan basketball and the Pistons, like the squads that we've covered these teams all season intently. The Pistons are the ones that are actually coming through on the expectations and then some. They're the ones who, when we reset the expectations, they still maintain that pace. Every single barrier that goes up in front of them, this Pistons team is keeping pace. And that, to me, obviously, you tip the cap to a JB Bickerstaff, who NBA Coach of the Year. I don't care what anybody else will say. That's just me. I think that the Pistons have a good chance to sweep those 3 awards that we talk about, MIP, 6-man, and the Cotty. That, to me, is definitely going to be JB Bickerstaff this year. And it's because of the fact that this Pistons team has developed an identity in less than 1 season. They have developed chemistry in less than 1 season. They have developed a winning attitude and a winning spirit after your 2 of your worst 3 historical seasons in the franchise's history, man. And so this Pistons team and everything they showed, even though it was 2-2 and we thought they could win 3-1, it's really in contrast to the fact that we know this team has lived up to the new expectations and then some.
It's 2-2 while also getting back-to-back home games against the Wizards on the back end of that, while the Bucks and the Pacers have cooled off a bit. So that 2-2 West Coast trip, even though it was a little bit disappointing considering our expectations. I mean, Rod Beard wanted them to sweep, but at the same time, this could end up being a really big split for them, especially if, the Pistons take care of business against the Wizards in their next 2 games, like we suspect they will. The Wizards, to borrow a phrase I used last Friday, are ass juice.
Yeah, I think the Pistons have a good chance to move up in the standings this week. And just one more tidbit before we get to everybody's favorite segment. The Detroit Pistons are actually closer right now to the New York Knicks, sitting in the 3rd seed. They're 5 games behind the Knicks. They are 5.5 games ahead of the Hawks, who sit just behind them in the play-ins. And so, you know what? This is going to be an interesting run down the end of the season here. I do believe that they're still in play for that 46 wins, but it's going to be an interesting close, man. 36-29.
And I'll tell you what, we don't root for injury on Wake Up Woodward, but Jalen Brunson's out a couple weeks.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, the Knicks, they really need him. And they could sputter a little bit with him out. It wouldn't shock anybody.
There's a couple teams that the Detroit Pistons have on the schedule coming up whose players are a little hobbled right now. It was interesting to see the rash from LeBron to Amin Thompson to others who are now out for multiple weeks. Bro, there's only multiple weeks left in the season. So the Pistons are in a position where they have proven to be able to overcome adversity this year. The loss of Jaden Ivey was huge. Losing Tobias Harris even for some of those games, and earlier in the season, Isaiah Stewart for a game here and there. This team has proven that they can face and meet adversity, and it's going to be an interesting run to end the season. They got a couple, like you said, against the Wizards, and then it's some teams there like the Heat, the Mavericks, the Pelicans twice, the Spurs, right? Who no Wemby. That's what I'm saying. The Pistons can definitely engorge themselves over this next 10 games.
I mean, think about this just really quick. You got 2 games against Washington. Home versus OKC is going to be tough. But before the season, you would have expected both Miami and Dallas to be a lot more formidable than they currently are. And I think that is an understatement. The Spurs, no Wemby. You love to see that. Mm-hmm. By the time the Pistons play the Knicks, I'm sure Jalen Brunson will be back, barring a setback. But those are a couple of games coming up. You've got
only 4 wins separating the Pistons and the Knicks in the win column. That's crazy.
Your next 8 games, go win 6 of them.
Yeah,
dead serious. Look at their schedule.
It's possible.
I wouldn't be mad if they lost to OKC. I wouldn't be mad if they lost to Cleveland necessarily. I wouldn't be furious if they dropped one of the road games. But at least win one of those 3 and finish this 8-game trip at 6-2. Just take care of business against the Pelicans. Yeah, you got
Wizards games, 2 wins.
Yes.
Thunder.
I'll call that a loss.
Pelicans win.
And
they got to win.
Yeah.
The Heat, character game, but you got to win.
It's a win.
You got to win, dog. The Mavericks, you got to win. They ain't got nobody. Pelicans again, you got to win. Spurs, you got to win. Then you got back-to-back Cavs, Timberwolves. Come on.
Yeah.
I will say this. I could see them potentially splitting with the Pelicans because Zion Williamson is back. But maybe they rest him both games.
No, that makes a difference because Zion Williamson loves going off on the Pistons.
He is the best draft bust I think we've ever seen. Because every time I know, I get it. No, every time that man plays, he's amazing.
He's great, yeah.
Amazing. But
he doesn't play.
So calling him a bust might be harsh, but
part-time star.
No, he's a phenomenal player. It's just that
we just got to see him away from New Orleans, man, because he is just not going to give them what they wanted to get out of him this whole time. Once he goes to a different, market, different team, I think we'll see a better Zion Williamson. So I'm not ready to call him a bust just yet, but like you said, he's not on the floor.
Hey, look, Thomas. What'd you say again, brother?
I'm sorry.
I said just sneak in some deep dish pizzas whenever he comes to the Pistons locker room. Maybe he doesn't play. Maybe he has an upset stomach. You never know.
This guy, JB.
Or the chicken tenders.
Or chicken tenders.
Hey, you know what? The chicken tenders, man.
Yes,
there you go.
Yes, indeed.
I got Willie B. I got somebody who understands the struggle.
We do.
We understand it, man.
Burn-ass chicken.
I'm getting some chicken tenders this week, Willie B.
Oh, same here.
Shout out LCA, man. Shout out LCA. And you know, I see you, Thomas Woodford. Get Kool-Aid some different shades. He looking like Fox and Ray. No
How
shade.
about some buffs?
hey, don't JB Fox sing too? Yeah.
Get some buffs.
But you know what? We had some, and after the draft show, and I think it is time for us to get some more, man. Definitely for the crew. We're gonna do something.
I'll pick one out.
We're gonna do something.
Oh, it must definitely.
We're gonna do something. But let's double up again, man, and get to everybody's favorite segment before we wrap up the show. This one blew by.
Oh, yeah.
The whole show, man. Shout out to the chat family as well. Smashing that like button. Let's take this thing as high as we can. So if you guys haven't been able to, definitely hit that like button.
Absolutely. We got Buddy's Pizza.
Buddy's Pizza.
Yep.
Pizza. And that's where we can get them that deep dish, huh?
Deep dish.
Buddy's Pizza has been serving the original Detroit style pizza since 1946, 79 years.